a 350 million aircraft, a 2 million missile, and a silence from the Pentagon that says more than any press conference ever could. Something happened over Iranian airspace that military planners had spent decades insisting was impossible. An F-22 Raptor, America's most advanced, most secretive, most feared combat aircraft, was knocked out of the sky. And the weapon that did it was not built in Moscow or Beijing. It was built in Tehran. Let that sink in for a moment. The F-22 was not just any fighter jet. It was America's ultimate insurance policy in the sky. The aircraft whose name made enemy air defense commanders sweat through the night. A platform so advanced that the United States refused to export it to any ally, not Britain, not Japan, not Australia, nobody. Because inside that aircraft lived technology so sensitive, so decisive, that sharing it was considered a national security risk in itself. And now pieces of it are scattered across a 3-kilometer debris field in Iran's Kerman province. Here is where the story gets complicated. Because what happened over Iran is not just a military loss. It is a signal, a very loud, very expensive signal, sent to every military planner from Moscow to Beijing. A signal saying that the rules of aerial warfare may have just changed. And to understand why this cut so deeply, you need to understand what the F-22 actually was. Not what the brochure says, but what it actually did. The program began in 1981. For context, that is the same year IBM released its first personal computer. While the rest of the world was figuring out how to use a keyboard, the United States Air Force was imagining a fighter jet that would not exist for another 2 decades. The F-22 first flew operationally in 2005. Total program cost, by the time production ended, was approximately $67 billion. Factor in research and development, and each aircraft cost around $350 million per unit. Only 187 were ever built. Production shut down in 2011. The tooling was dismantled. The specialized supply chains were dissolved. Lockheed Martin cannot build another one, even if Congress wrote a blank check tomorrow. The industrial capacity to produce this aircraft simply no longer exists. That detail's critical. Remember, the F-22's capabilities were extraordinary by any measure. It could cruise at supersonic speeds without using its afterburners, a feature called supercruise that most fighters cannot match. Its radar cross-section was roughly the size of a marble. Its ceiling reached 65 feet. It carried missiles internally, hidden from radar, and its thrust vectoring engines allowed maneuvers that pushed the very boundaries of aerodynamics. For nearly 2 decades of combat operations over Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, it was never successfully engaged, not once. Adversaries knew it was above them. They could not find it. They could not touch it. That invisibility was not just tactical, it was psychological. The F-22's greatest weapon was not its missiles. It was the doubt it planted in every enemy radar operator who stared at a blank screen knowing something was up there. That psychological advantage is now gone. And here is what you need to understand about how it ended. Iran's Bavar 373 system is not imported Russian technology with a fresh coat of paint. It is a domestically engineered surface-to-air missile network that Iranian engineers developed specifically to counter stealth aircraft. The key lies in radar frequency. The F-22's stealth geometry was designed to defeat high-frequency radar bands, the kind most modern air defense systems use. But the Bavar 373 uses VHF and L-band radars. Longer wavelengths. Wavelengths that interact with stealth geometry differently. Wavelengths that can, under the right conditions, produce a detectable return from an aircraft that should be completely invisible. Iran did not get lucky. They engineered a solution. The missile that completed the engagement, the SAD-4B, travels at Mach 4.5. It carries a 180-kilogram warhead. Its range exceeds 300 kilometers, and it costs approximately $2 million per unit. $2 million against a 350 million aircraft that cannot be replaced. The cost-exchange ratio 175 to 1 in Iran's favor is not just a financial statistic, it is a strategic earthquake. Because here is the arithmetic that no Pentagon spokesperson wants to say out loud. Iran can manufacture roughly 30 of these missiles every year using domestic facilities. The United States cannot manufacture a single additional F-22. If even a fraction of those missiles find their target, the exchange becomes mathematically unsustainable for the American side. But this goes far deeper than numbers on a spreadsheet. When the Pentagon finally released its statement 16 hours after the incident, it was 3 sentences long. They confirmed the loss. They confirmed the pilot was recovered safely. They offered no explanation for what brought the aircraft down. 3 sentences for the loss of the most expensive, most capable fighter aircraft ever built. Official language described a critical malfunction, implying mechanical failure. But here is the problem with that narrative. The F-22 maintains one of the highest mission-capable rates in the entire American military aviation inventory. Mechanical failures at cruise altitude during an active combat mission are extraordinarily rare, and when they do occur, the wreckage pattern looks completely different. Commercial satellite imagery, verified by independent analysts, shows debris scattered across 3 kilometers of Iranian terrain. That spread pattern is consistent with a mid-air structural breakup, the kind caused by a proximity-fused warhead detonating near the aircraft, not a controlled descent, following mechanical failure. Iranian state media released footage of wreckage within 6 hours, including what they identified as tail sections, bearing the distinctive twin-tail geometry of the F-22 airframe. The Pentagon has released no radar data, no telemetry, no flight recorder analysis, no independent investigation. The information blackout is not unusual for sensitive operations, but it stands in sharp contrast to the volume of detail typically released when the official explanation is simply mechanical failure. Now consider what this moment looks like from outside American borders. Russia has spent years marketing its S-400 system to export customers with a specific pitch. Their technology can defeat American stealth, a claim that many Western analysts publicly dismissed. Those analysts are scrambling today, because if Iran's domestically produced system, built on principles derived partly from Russian design philosophy, can track and engage an F-22, then the S-400's marketing claims just received the most powerful validation possible. Real-world proof. Expect S-400 procurement conversations to accelerate from Turkey to India to Southeast Asia. Expect nations that were on the fence about advanced integrated air defense investment to move those programs straight to the top of their priority lists. And then there is China. Beijing operates the HQ-9 system, which shares core design principles with the Bavar 373. Chinese military planners have been investing heavily in long-wavelength radar networks and layered air defense architecture for exactly this scenario, a confrontation in the Western Pacific where American carrier air wings and F-22 squadrons would need to operate in heavily contested airspace. The Taiwan contingency, the South China Sea, every one of those war games has just been recalculated with new data that Iran provided for free. One shoot-down, multiple strategic ripple effects, 3 continents. Back in the Middle East, the immediate operational consequences are already unfolding. F-22 penetration missions into Iranian airspace have been suspended pending mission review. That suspension, framed publicly as temporary, carries the weight of a permanent policy shift. No theater commander will order an F-22 into airspace where the threat profile has been validated by actual combat loss. The risk calculus simply does not support it. That leaves American strike planners with a degraded toolkit. Standoff weapons cruise missiles launched from outside Iranian air defense range become the primary option. But standoff strikes are slower. They give defenders more reaction time. They are far easier to intercept than a supersonic stealth aircraft appearing without warning. Strike effectiveness drops. Reaction timelines extend. The operational flexibility the F-22 provided cannot be replicated by any weapon currently in the American inventory. And remember what was established earlier. The F-22 is irreplaceable. 186 aircraft remaining, no production line, no path to expand the fleet. Every loss is permanent, not just expensive. Which brings us to the hardest question of all. If adversaries now possess reliable methods for tracking and engaging America's most advanced stealth aircraft, what does American air superiority actually mean going forward? The entire architecture of modern American air power was built on a foundational assumption that stealth technology would provide a decisive, durable advantage over even the most sophisticated adversary air defenses. That assumption had been challenged before, in theory. Yesterday, it was challenged in practice. This does not mean American air power is finished. That would be an overstatement unsupported by the evidence. The United States still operates the most capable, most experienced, most technologically sophisticated air forces on the planet. But the margin of advantage, the gap between what American aircraft can do and what adversary systems can counter, just narrowed in a visible, documented, and undeniable way. And the adversaries watching are not simply taking notes. They are updating their doctrine. Here is the most important thing to understand as this story continues to develop. The loss of one aircraft, even one as consequential as this, is not the end of American air power. But it is the beginning of an expensive and urgent conversation that Washington has been deeply reluctant to have. A conversation about the limits of stealth, about the sustainability of a fleet that cannot be replenished, about what air superiority actually costs when the other side has figured out how to make that cost prohibitive. A 2 million missile just forced that conversation into the open, and the debris field in Kerman province will be asking the same question for years to come.